Hi everybody, and happy Uranium Cube Day. To celebrate this great occasion, I decided to film a casual little video about uranium. And for this video, I do have an actual uranium sample with me, which is right here. So, the first thing you might be thinking is, well, how radioactive is it? Is it dangerous? Is that why you're wearing your glove right here? No, not really. It's actually not radioactive at all in this situation. First, just because it's in this plastic cube. Second, natural uranium isn't actually that radioactive. It is somewhat radioactive, but its radiation is quite weak. It's not really a concern for humans unless it gets inside your body. So, no, especially this uranium, because it is not pure uranium. This is a uranium ore sample, and it's about roughly 45% uranium. Now, under certain circumstances, uranium can actually be dangerous. Firstly, important thing to know about uranium, which is something that a lot of people don't really talk about, is that uranium is actually toxic. It is a toxic metal, and it can poison you. So, that is one concern. Another concern is when you get uranium powder. That can also be dangerous to come into direct contact to, because it's easy to breathe some of the dust in, and once it gets inside your body, the radiation becomes the actual concern. The toxicity is a concern, and it can really harm your body. Another thing with uranium, and especially uranium powder again, is that uranium is actually flammable, which I know it sounds funny. Like, you don't think of a metal as being a flammable material, but uranium powder can ignite quite easily, and that is another serious hazard. So, another thing you might be wondering about this is, well, does it glow in the dark? Short answer, no. And you can see that right here. It is not glowing. I am holding it right here in my hand, and nothing is glowing. Under certain circumstances, it can glow, though. If you had an ultraviolet light and shined it on this, it would fluoresce and it would glow in the dark. But outside of that, it's not going to glow in the dark. Okay. Another thing you might know uranium well for is, well, nuclear weapons. So you can make nukes out of uranium, right? Yeah, sort of. Um, First, I'd like to point out that in the United States, you can only legally own up to 15 pounds of uranium, which is actually just enough to build an atom bomb out of. You need at least 15 pounds to make an atom bomb work. However, if you had 15 pounds of uranium like this, except it was pure and just some metal, you would not be able to build an atom bomb out of it, actually, even if you had the know how and all the resources. And this is because this is uranium 238, and you can't build a bomb out of that. So, uranium 238 is not the right isotope. An isotope refers to how many neutrons are in the nucleus of the atom. Um, it is not a fissile material. The only fissile isotope of uranium, which can be found in nature, is uranium 235, and that is the only fissile material that exists in all of nature. And almost all the uranium in nature is uranium 238, like the sample I'm holding right here. So, to get uranium 235, you would have to basically enrich uranium to get the enriched uranium. So the enrichment process refers to just getting uranium 235, which is then referred to as enriched uranium, which you can build a bomb out of if you had all the resources and knowledge necessary to accomplish such a thing. That being said, even though uranium 235 is only fissile material that can be found in nature, it's not the only fissile material that exists. A lot of plutonium is also a fissile, and you can build bombs out of that. So the first atomic bomb ever tested on this planet was made with plutonium, as well as a bomb that was dropped on Nagasaki. The bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, though, that was actually made out of uranium 235. And the fallout that results from the bomb is not directly from the uranium, but rather it's just isotopes of other elements that are radioactive, such as cobalt, which is not really thought of as a radioactive element, but those some of those isotopes can be radioactive and cause the radiation that you get from the fallout. So another thing is you might be wondering why I have these two bowls here. Um, these are Fiestaware bowls, and back in the day, red and especially orange Fiestaware had uranium in it, and this was actually a health hazard. And not because the uranium was actually radioactive, but because it was toxic. That was the issue. And it actually acted a lot like lead dishware. So if you had acidic food, that would be especially bad because it could leach out the toxins and that could really harm people. So that is why we no longer use uranium in red and orange Fiestaware. We stopped doing that for a very good reason. Uranium, of course, also used for nuclear power. Nuclear power is not directly the result of nuclear fission, but rather nuclear fission generates heat, which is used to boil water to make a lot of steam, and then that steam is used to power turbines, which then generate electricity, which is how most power plants operate and generate electricity. Then, of course, you have the nuclear waste, which we store in areas um, that are kind of in the middle of nowhere. Of course, long term storage of nuclear waste is a serious concern because of the how hazardous it can be. There's nuclear recycling, so you can essentially use the waste to keep generating more power. The United States is not invested in this though because of security concerns. Of course, having like nuclear weapons just around is a bigger security concern, and of course those facilities are very secure. So we could definitely do the same thing with the nuclear recycling program. However, you would have to invest money for the security and the program itself, which is why we don't have it currently. Um, so yeah, um, in terms of nuclear weapons too, the first nuclear chain reaction, which is also kind of used by nuclear power too, was done by Enrico Fermi under Chicago University. They created the first nuclear fission chain reaction in Chicago Pile 1. So that was a pretty consequential moment. That is important to note. So, uranium is also used a lot by the military too. Um, Outside of nuclear weapons, they use depleted uranium, which is uranium that basically doesn't produce much radiation at all anymore, and they use that to build like armor-piercing shells and use it for armor itself. The reason why is because uranium is really dense, so it's good at pushing through things and smashing through them. So that's why it's used for armor-piercing shells. Of course, my beloved metal tungsten is also used for that, and is more dense than uranium and is easier to work with. But uranium is used because if you're a nuclear power, you often have a lot of it in spare that you can use. And the uranium is also used for armor, like on tanks, for example. They use depleted uranium armor, which is also really hard to break through. Um, so that's why the military will often use uranium. Um, Uranium additionally is also used to protect people from radiation, funnily enough. And this is, again, because it's really dense, so it's hard for radiation to get through depleted uranium. More commonly, though, lead and tungsten are used for radiation shielding, but yeah, occasionally you get depleted uranium being used. So that gives you a little bit of information about uranium, and I hope all of you have a very happy uranium cube day, and you should celebrate hard.